and welcome. This is BSB PubFest. This is our first ever inaugural BSB PubFest, and we are so excited to be able to offer you an amazing program of publishing specific topics from the one that is our panel right now, BSB Behind the Scenes, to panels about editing. Rad is giving an amazing class on story structure. We have a panel on fan fiction that we're all really excited about. Some of our authors will be talking about why it is that they chose BSB as their publisher. And then to end the day, we have a panel on how to pitch your novel to a publisher. So thank you all so much for being here. Alrighty, so as mentioned, this panel is called BSB Behind the Scenes. And all these amazing people are our part of our team here at BSB. And this panel is just designed to give you a glimpse of who BSB is, what it is we do, what it's like to work here, and to answer any of your questions about Bold Strokes books and our team and our process. So if you do have questions, please pop them into the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of your screen. I won't be taking questions from the chat roll unless I happen to catch them before it kind of slides by. So please do put them in the Q&A and then I will be sure to see them. All right, so first up, I would love it if you could all just introduce yourselves, your name and what your role is at BSB. Why don't we start, as always, with Rad.
I am Radclyffe. I'm the publisher.
Cindy?
I'm Cindy Cresap. I'm the production manager. I'm also an editor.
So I'm Carsen Taite. I'm an author with Bold Strokes Books. I'm also the event coordinator, and I'm the submissions coordinator, and I also head up our education initiative.
Wow, your role has like ballooned. Awesome. And Toni.
Hi, I'm Toni Whittaker, and I'm the ebook developer and also the distributor to some of the third-party websites.
Awesome, thank you. So because we hope that this new event that we have, BSB PubFest, will be bringing in maybe some readers and some authors who are new to BSB, I would just like to start with Rad, just kind of giving us a little rundown of who is BSB, like who are we and what's our mission and what is it that's important to us here? Rad.
Okay, thanks, Sandy. When I was trying to think about how the best way to do this, I was thinking about what would I want to know about a publishing company if I were a potential author looking for some place to send my books. And what I did was I made a list of questions that would-be authors or those getting ready to submit or those who are actually already here might be thinking about. And the first thing is really, who is BSB? What are we, or who are we? And our business profile is we are an LGBTQ plus publisher. And what that means is that we publish queer works for the queer community that feature, or anyone who wants to read them, that feature main characters who are queer. Secondary characters who might show up in a different kind of work with main characters who are not queer, probably would do better in another market. But again, we would always be willing to look at any queries. The next question I would ask is, who is the publisher and what do they do? And since that's me, I will tell you. My role is to direct the selection of the titles that we publish and to oversee in a global sense, bringing those titles to publication. But I don't do all of the critical jobs that are involved in publishing a book. And that's why some of the other people here are key in that function. And many people who aren't here are also key in that function. So it's really a large company. We have over 35 independent contractors and associates who are involved in the production of our titles. And I'll tell you a little bit about who they are, and they'll be telling you specifically who they are as they talk to you this morning. The next thing you'd want to know is, well, how will my book get to readers? And Toni mentioned something about third-party distribution. And basically, our books are available worldwide through multiple channels of distribution, meaning that we list our books with mainstream distributors so that the paperbacks can reach bookstores, retailers, libraries throughout the world, essentially. All of our ebooks are available through multiple vendors throughout the world, as are our audiobooks. We also have a very vital, busy e-commerce web store so that all of our titles are listed there and can be purchased direct from readers. So we have multiple avenues to get your books to your readers wherever they are. Some of the other questions you might think about are, well, how successful is this company? I mean, is this a good place to send my books? And the answer, I think, is multifold. We have been in business since 2004. We have been continuously publishing since then. Over that period of time, we have published almost 2,000 unique titles, 99.9% of which are still in production, which essentially means if you published a book in 2006, readers can still find it. And I think that's one of the critical things to ask about any publishing company. How long will my title be available? Will it be gone from the bookshelves in 6 weeks, or will someone be able to buy it in 2 years? We also have, over the course of that period of time, signed over 250 authors who have published with us, many of whom, the vast majority of whom, are still publishing with us. We publish 120 titles a year, sometimes a little more. That puts us in what's considered the mid-size publication range. So we are considered mid-size publishers, which is why we can take advantage of mainstream distribution channels, which is very important when you think about how your books will be produced and distributed to the people who want to read them and whom you want to reach. Some of the other questions you might want to ask are, how successful are the Bold Strokes books authors? Have I ever heard of them? And I think one of the easiest things to do is ask yourself, have you ever heard of us? Have you seen our books online? Have you seen promotions and marketing? Are our authors visible in events? Are they winning awards, or are they nominated for awards? Is this a company that has a large presence in the publishing world? And I hope that the reason some of you are here today is because maybe you've never heard of us before, but you saw something from us. And that's something that's very important. And we spend a lot of our time and energy trying to reach the reading community so that we can create audience for our authors. And we do that in multiple ways. We produce a newsletter, which goes out very frequently with all of our new releases so that people know what's coming up, that shows sales. If one of our authors gets a great review, we send out a newsletter to promote it. Promotion doesn't end with publication. For our authors, it's an ongoing thing forever. When a new book comes out, we market their backlist. So these are the kinds of things, if you're thinking about looking for a publisher, you would want to think about. The last thing I wanted to mention is what I consider infrastructure, which are the things that you don't see on the surface. And they're the critical things that support authors in the publication of their work and in the growth of their craft. We support you with editors, graphic artists, ebook developers like Toni, proofreaders, typesetters, marketing and event consultants. If you are involved in an event at a local library or a Pride event, we will help market and promote you. Our job is to promote your books after we produce a really good book. And everyone here is basically dedicated to doing that. The last thing that I wanted to mention that we'll talk a little bit more about later when I do my craft session is, as Carsen mentioned, our educational initiatives. When I started the company, I wanted to do two things. I wanted to help authors publish really good queer books. And I wanted to help authors grow their career. And being an author myself, part of becoming a better author is learning how to write better. And a lot of that includes craft. So we began an educational initiative last year, which we've been talking about for a long time, but suddenly we had the time and the medium to do it, called BSB Grow. And I'm going to talk more in detail about it later, but it's an in-house educational program that is geared towards informing our authors about both craft, career, marketing, legal information that is germane to the development of an author's career. So that's who we are. That's what we do. And I hope that you enjoy spending the afternoon with us.
Awesome. Thanks, Rad. And if you do want to learn more about BSB Grow, be sure to check out Rad's talk on story structure, which is on at 3:30 Eastern. Okay, so my next question is about our roles, what it is that we actually do behind the scenes here at BSB. And I'm going to start because I forgot to introduce myself. So this is the trouble when you moderate and you're on the panel too. It's hard. So I'm Sandie Low, and I'm Bold Strokes Books senior editor. And that's a very general kind of title that basically means that I work directly with Rad here at the Bold Strokes Books office. And I kind of manage the day-to-day running of the company on an operations level. So if there's something that comes up that needs some kind of top-level decision, it usually comes to me. I also work with all our authors who are already contracted with us on what they're going to write next. So they send a book idea and I talk that through with them. And all the contracts and the royalties and all the bills and all that kind of stuff that's involved in running our company. That's what I handle, obviously with Rad too. So we are a team, I think, to working together here every day to run things. Cool. So I would love to hear what your roles are, what's involved in what you do. Cindy, let's start with you. Production manager, editor combo.
I'm the cat herder, obviously. Production manager, that means I'm the person that sort of shepherds the books through from when the author submits their draft. I make sure it gets to the editor. I make sure that the editor is not having difficulties, that there aren't anything delaying the production. I prepare the books to be typeset, the front matter, the back matter, anything that's not the story itself. I get them through to typesetting, proofreading, and then to the printer and the ebook file, or the stuff that Toni needs to make the ebooks. That's the main part of what I do. I also do some of the larger schedule marketing material I put together. The sort of the boring behind the scenes stuff, not the flashy stuff that actually makes the sale, but the information that's needed. I register the copyrights. There's a host of little random tasks that I do, but the main one is I'm the person that's keeping an eye on your book as it's moving through the process of being sent to print.
For sure. You keep us all on track. Make sure we're all sticking to our deadlines and everything comes in on time and goes out on time. Yeah. Without you, we'd be lost.
Yeah.
And do you want to say a little bit about what you do as editor?
Yeah, I'm also an editor. I do content and copy edits. And that's what takes up the bulk of my time is the editing. And that's, that varies with each author. Some authors don't really need a lot in terms of edits. But Bold Strokes is a company that still accepts and is willing to work with new authors who need some help with their craft and with sort of story structure, and we're able to provide that. We're able to provide what used to be called book doctoring. We can provide structural edits. We can provide stylistic edits. Our goal, each editor, your goal is to take that author and make that author a better author over time. So you're always not just looking at the book that's in front of you, but you're thinking about the previous books. Where have you come, and where can we kind of, push you to go a little farther and to get, even better at what you do.
Sure.
But I'm sure the editing panel will be much, much more detailed and involved with exactly how that works. But.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Cindy. Carsen, I already forgot the 40,000 things that you do, but hopefully you haven't. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what's involved in your various roles?
So as event coordinator, I basically help our authors coordinate setting up individual events, pride festivals, various other appearances that they do at libraries, local resource centers, wherever, bookstores. I'll help coordinate getting the books for those events, providing Bold Strokes is extremely generous in sponsorships and helps provide swag and banners and promotional materials so that authors have the tools they need to promote their books at various venues. We also have a big event every year that's our kind of flagship event at Women's Week in Provincetown, and we'll be there live this year. Just a tiny plug. That's the second week in October. And I also coordinate the submissions that come in. So when they come in, Rad puts eyes on every single submission that comes in the door. And then she and I work together to coordinate tracking the ones that we will that are being reviewed. I get those out to our review committee and kind of track the notes on those. And if you've submitted a book, I'm the person you'll hear from about whether or not it's been accepted for review. I also coordinate the BSB Grow program, setting up the speakers, setting up the Zoom panels, and all of that. And then various other things, random, as Cindy said, random things that coordinate with all of those kind of groupings.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to tag on what Rad said a minute ago. When you're looking for a publisher, ask, does your publisher have someone dedicated to helping you promote your books? Because you can write the book, and that's great, and your publisher can print a bunch of copies, but is it getting to where it needs to get? Are you getting the promotion you need? And does the publisher you're looking at have someone who can help you coordinate all that? Because it's not that easy to put all those pieces together. I also work with Ruth Sternglantz, who does a lot of our promotional PR work, runs our social media channels, and we work in tandem on getting the information out about individual author events and also company-wide events.
Cool. Thanks, Carsen. And I guess you write books sometimes in your spare time.
Occasionally. So yeah, I do have that perspective, so that's kind of nice.
Awesome. And Toni, tell us a little bit about your role.
Okay. As Cindy said, she kind of monthly, I get a pile of files from Cindy that are the final products for each title, and it is my job to take those files and convert them into electronic formats for different devices. Luckily now there are a lot fewer than there were when we started this process. We're down to just really 3 formats that are prevalent out there now. But when we all started this, there was, upwards of 8 or 9 different formats because everybody was trying to get into business. But luckily, like I said, things have settled down now. So it's easier, but you still got different vendors that have their own devices. And even though they're supposed to be standards, you will find even with the devices and with applications that people use on their mobile devices that not everybody's following the rules. So it's, I do my best to try to come to a single file or a single set of instructions for the ebooks that'll work on the majority of the devices out there. There's some things, really cool things that I would love to be able to do that would mimic the print books a little bit more, like drop caps and things like that. But you would think that would be something that would be kind of straightforward, but you can look at it on 10 different devices, and believe me, I have more than 10 different devices in my house right now because like I said, things have changed, and you can't just create the book and then, send it out the door. So I try to look at it on all different kinds of devices and things like that. And after I finish creating them and they go through a little QA process, I have someone that helps me out because, after you've looked at them for so long, there's things you might miss. And she actually has different devices that she uses, different process, and she'll find things. So, a missing blank line here and there. And to be honest, I'm kind of anal about that stuff. I want these books to be the best books they can be. And, if there's not, even a lot of times she finds, especially in the list of books in the back that we have, sometimes I'll miss a blank line, and she's like, oh, you're missing a line here. And I'm like, crap, here we go again. But again, that's something that when it gets in the reader's hand, because, that line's there in the print book and I want it to be in the ebook too. So I do my best to make sure that these books for the authors, because, I want to do my part for this company to put the best product out we can. So, that's kind of, what I want to do. And after everything's done and they're ready to be sold, then we have, like I said, I put my distributor hat on where I'm, upload them to many different vendors. And once again, everybody plays by a different set of rules. There's not, for every site I have to upload them to, I have to do something different. There's not one process for everybody. Some just straight uploading, some you got to create a spreadsheet, and it's just, but I love it. So, it may seem like I'm complaining, but I'm not, because I love it. And I love the people that I work with. I love the people that I work for. So,
Well, that's awesome. We would
Hey,
definitely
Toni. Sorry, Sandie. Toni, do you know offhand how many third-party vendors do you upload to? I'm sure you know precisely.
I should know. I think it's 10. Yeah.
Yeah, the reason I asked is because when I was talking earlier about distribution, it's not just print distribution, which is obviously critical, and everyone always wants to know, is my book going to be in a library? Well, your ebooks are in libraries too. And they don't get there by magic, and ebooks don't get made by magic. People seem to have the misunderstanding that ebooks are free, that they don't cost anything to make because, hey, you already write the book, right? But that's not true at all. It's a different production process from the source material, and Toni has to adapt it not once, but multiple times for different readers. So it is every bit as much a critical part of the production process as sending a book to print. And that's something that Toni and I have been working together with since 2010. Since I think that was the first year that we began to make our catalog digital. So I just think it's something that this is definitely behind the scenes that you really don't appreciate about the production process in a major publishing house. And thank you.
Sure. And just to follow up on that, there are some, and there are some places that will, give me your file. I'll create an ebook for you, and they got the built-in process. And to be honest, there are a lot of them, they come out looking like crap, or they don't, they look okay, but they don't meet my specifications. So even, when I do my first set of conversions, it's just a process where I go through and I'm looking for different things. I'm looking for missed things like this. That's not something that I don't think a lot of people get when they deal with these, just send me your file, I'll convert it for you. Or if you do, you got, it's going to cost you money because every time they touch it, they have to, you find something and they fix it, they're going to charge you for it. But, for me, to me, it should be perfect going out the door. So it shouldn't be a point of, you got to pay me to fix it. So.
And if she finds a typo, she lets us know. So that's like, the last line. If it gets past Toni, it's going to be okay.
So we have some great questions in our Q&A. which is awesome. And a lot of them are about submissions. So I'm going to try to cobble some of them together so that we can answer everybody's questions about submissions. What are some common mistakes that we see in our submissions? Is there anything an author can do to ensure that their work is of kind of a publishable standard before it gets sent to us? Brad, do you want to start? And then Carsen, maybe you can follow up.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make the assumption that everyone who submits a manuscript has read the submission guidelines, which are posted on our website, and every publisher should have them, and they're probably going to differ from publisher to publisher. Ours aren't too onerous at all. They just tell you what you need to include, but it is important to read the guidelines and try to meet them as well as possible. What that tells me when I see a submission is that you're actually interested in publishing with us. You've investigated us, you've looked at what we want, and you've paid attention to it. So that's the very first thing you should do. It sounds silly to say, but we get submissions that don't fit our guidelines at all because they're not queer, for example. Obviously, that's not going to be the case with probably everyone watching in the audience, but it does have to be something that we probably do publish. In terms of what makes a book publishable, that's not a simple answer. It's not a one-line answer. The work, if it meets, the basic qualifications, which is it's a queer story with a queer main character or substantial queer themes, that's number one. Number two, it has to be identifiable. It's hard to publish a book that we can't figure out what it is. It's hard to even review a book if we don't know what it is. And that sounds a little facetious, but it isn't. If you're writing a romance, you need to tell us that. If you're writing a romantic fantasy or a romantic intrigue or a general fiction or a coming of age, you need to know what your work is. And that's the first thing you ought to tell us. You ought to say, I am submitting a 60,000 word young adult work featuring, and tell us a little bit about the book. So a good query, a good synopsis initially is very important because I need to look at that and say, yeah, this is something, we might want to publish. This fits our guidelines. This fits our list profile. So know what you're writing and be able to describe that for the publisher when you send it in. Obviously, it ought to be the best job you can do, which essentially means make sure it's a clean manuscript. Everybody has some form of word processing program that ought to pick up spelling errors and things like that. And you need to do that. You need to make sure your manuscript is clean. Maybe have someone else read it and take a look at it. Are you sure it's the best story you can write? Sometimes you don't know. I mean, if you think it's done, if you've done the best job you can do, that's good enough. Because not everyone sends a manuscript that right in the face of it is ready to be published. But if I can look at a manuscript that has a compelling story, that has interesting characters, that's reasonably well written, something that we can work with you and edit it, then I'm going to be interested. It may not be ready to go to publication on the next day, but if we can work with you and get it ready for publication within a reasonable period of time, then that's what we do here. We work with you to make books publishable.
Awesome. Carsen, do you have anything to follow up?
No, I mean, Rad really covered it. We don't accept simultaneous submissions, and that's something that comes up quite a bit.
Yeah.
The submissions review process is, a lot of people are involved, and it takes a lot of time. And if, Rad doesn't want to get to the point where we are ready to offer publication and then find out that you've already in talks with somebody else or, have already accepted another offer. So that's something to be careful of up front. But yeah, definitely in that first email, just tell us who you are and why you're passionate about writing and what your book is. The genre is so important. Is there a particular hook, a trope, something that will really resonate with readers? And that's something that we can focus on.
Sure. There's a couple of similar questions that that I think we did already cover, but maybe not with the exact language. Someone asked, what does accepted for review mean? I would say that books that are not queer focused are not accepted for review. So when Rad says, Carsen will go through and make sure books are accepted for review, that would be why. And someone else asked, what is a hard no? And I think for BSB, that would be, again, we are an LGBTQ publisher, and if your book isn't LGBTQ focused or themed, that would be a no from us, just because that's not what we publish. We also predominantly publish fiction. So if you are writing, we do very occasionally publish memoir style book, but if you're writing nonfiction or poetry, that would also be a no.
There are obviously a few things that you're probably going to have trouble getting published anywhere. Non-consensual sex, we're probably not going to publish that. Underage sex, there are things that obviously we're not likely to publish, and that would be a hard no, we won't review it. I think every publishing house has areas where they are very particular about what they publish, because it may be an area that doesn't sell as well as other areas, or maybe it's overpopulated. In general, we will review everything that meets our guidelines and is something that we publish. If I read a synopsis, very honestly, if I read a synopsis and the book sounds terrible, I'm not going to review it, because I don't want to publish it. And I can't really tell you specifically what that means, because someone else might want to. I mean, we're not a factory. We don't put covers on manuscripts that come in the door. We publish books that we feel are from serious authors, that matter to both the author and will matter to the reading community, and that represent kind of who we are. So sometimes I will read a synopsis and I'll just think, it's not really for us. It's not what we publish. And I may say no, and I will say no as quickly as I can, so that the author will be able to take it somewhere else where there may be a publisher who is publishing that kind of work. And that's why it's important for you to look around and see who's publishing what, so what you're writing may fit at that publishing house.
For sure. Okay, I know we have a lot of submissions questions, which is awesome, and that's good feedback for us, because we may need to have a whole panel on this at some later date. But just so Cindy and Toni aren't sitting there looking pretty, we're going to move on. I saw a question in the chat roll about editing, and I'm sorry, I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't have it right in front of me, but my possibly bad paraphrase of this question is, do we work with, and how do we work with authors who are neurodiverse? And so that one's for Cindy. I know we absolutely do have authors.
I was going to say we have several. It depends. I mean, you can't just give a blanket statement, because it depends on what the what the issues are with that person. We've worked with, trying to think, one author I worked with needed to have me be more just quick and direct with whatever instructions I had, or edit. I had to be careful how I worded my comments to something that she was more able to process and make sense to her. And so it took a little back and forth. Obviously, I mean, the main thing is communicating that to your editor, because your editor has no way of knowing if you have, whatever problems. I mean, years ago, before I worked with Bold Strokes, I worked with an author who was almost 80 years old, and I spend an hour on the phone teaching her how to write an email and attach a file to it. So, but I would have never known, that was going to be a problem unless she communicated that. So if you're an author and you have any kind of, special consideration, you just need to make that known to the publisher, and then known to the editor, and then we'll find a way to work around it.
For sure. We have authors who are autistic, authors who are dyslexic, and we are very flexible and open to whatever it is that our authors may need to best work with us. So whether that's, as Cindy said, in terms of saying things in a different way, whether it means using a different medium, right? So taking a Zoom call instead of sending an email or over the phone, whatever it is that we can do to best work with you, we are happy to do that. And I would say that goes for all our authors, not just our neurodiverse authors, but for sure. And as Cindy said, communication is key. If you just let us know what it is that you need, we would be more than happy to work with you.
And I know just the thought of having to share that with someone else is, can be daunting and can be, intimidating. But I think every one of our editors is. We would love to do whatever we will do whatever we need to do to help you to get the book edited. So
For sure. Carsen, here's one for you. Does BSB bring event opportunities to their authors, or do authors have to source event opportunities themselves?
We bring lots of opportunities to our authors to participate in events, but authors also source opportunities on their own. Sometimes there are local resource centers, libraries, local pride festivals that authors come to us. We have like a really great information sheet that we provide our authors, telling them of ways they can find local opportunities and how we will support them in those. But we also have we help our authors with conferences that we know about. Our authors have participated in, of course, Women's Week, which I spoke about earlier, GCLS, RWA, Romantic Times, all kinds of VoucherCon, which is put on by the Mystery Writers Association, all kinds of events that we get information about from those sources. We bring those to our authors and offer them opportunities and support in providing promotional things, swag, giveaways, sponsorships, etc. So.
Yep, for sure. Toni, why don't you tell us a little bit about how your role at BSB has changed over the years? Because you've been with BSB since the beginning. Is that right, Rad? Pretty close to.
Very much.
I don't want to say how long that is, but for quite some time. And you alluded to in your intro about how all the formats have changed. How has your role changed over time?
I think, let me look up. Actually, I think I started I'll put it out. It was like 2008. I think that's when the actual BSB opened their own web store. And the newsletter went out about, hey, we're getting ready to start selling our own ebooks, and we're working on our backlist, and we'll get them as fast as we can. And I sent Rad a note, said, hey, I've been doing this ebook thing for a while now, because I've just being the geek that I am. I mean, I'm a software developer by day, so I've always been a geek. So I was always, at the, as they called it, the bleeding edge of things. So I was playing around with this ebook stuff when I still had my Palm Pilot. And it was, there was actually a website back in the day called PDA Fiction. Some people might remember that. They dealt with fan fiction. So they like put fan fiction into ebook formats. And so I was actually helping that person on their website. I was like, hey, you know, if you need anybody help doing that. So that's how I kind of got into it. But then, of course, being the BSB fangirl that I was, when I saw that email, I was like, hey, this is a, you know, a way that I can help. And so I sent an email. And I was like, sure. So then I started then, and really at that time we had two formats. It was a PDF, and at the time it was called Moby Pocket. And for you all that don't know, Moby Pocket is now Kindle, Amazon. Amazon bought Moby Pocket. So they just, you know, when they decided to come out with their own device, they decided this was going to be the format that we were going to use. And then after that, other formats came out. Sony came out with a format that was called .lrf. They had their own format. Microsoft had one that was .lit. Palm Pilot was .pdb. So there were so many, like I said, everybody had one, but nobody had any consistency. So the biggest changes as time progressed, a lot of those dropped off. Sony actually became what we now know as an EPUB. So, you know, now we have EPUB. Amazon Moby Pocket became Kindle, which back in the day was the .prc file, and now it's the .mobi file. And if I'm boring you to death, I'm sorry. I kind of, when I start talking about this stuff, I start geeking out a little bit. So you have to forgive me. But really the change has been trying to keep up with what is changing in the industry with the new devices that are coming out. Like I said, luckily now we've settled down to just three formats, really the EPUB, of course, Amazon's going to do their own thing. Everybody else uses EPUBs. Amazon's still we're going to do our own thing. So, you know, you got to have the Mobi and the PDF. And let me just say, unless you really, really, really love PDF files, that is probably the least desirable format for an ebook, because it's, you know, it's not what we call reflowable. So you can't, it's so much easier if you're using an EPUB to change it to, or Mobi to change the font size and different fonts and things like that. But, you know, if that's what you love, that's what you love. And then, you know, one of the things too that changes, originally I was just doing the creating the ebooks, and back then I think we were doing like 4 a month, and now we're up to anywhere between 9 and 12 a month, depending on the month. So that changed. And also, you know, when we started getting when Amazon came on board and Rad, and I was like, you know, let's check out this Amazon thing, you know. And it's funny because as I was looking back to find an email about, you know, how long this has been, I came across something somebody wrote, and it was like, yeah, they're doing their own thing. I'll be surprised if they're still around in 5 years. And I'm thinking, yeah, that wasn't accurate at all. You know, they're the big behemoth in the room now, but, you know, so yeah, exactly. So it's just now, like I said, it's about changing with the times. Things, you know, new products come out. I constantly have, you know, even with Amazon's own devices, I have here, I'll hold it up for you so you can see. This is like one of my original Kindles. This was like the second Kindle I ever owned from way back in the day. And files won't look the same on that they do today. But again, you try to come up with something that will work for everybody. So it's, like I said, it's just, my job has changed with the way that the industry has changed as far as ebooks, and trying to stay with the requirements. And I guess my most recent change is I actually made a big change myself in my production work, because I was using one particular source to create the ebook. And now I'm using a different source. These are files that Sandie sends me a couple of different versions, you know, of the file. And I've always used one, but I've decided to go to another one because the other format allows me to use what they call the EPUB 3 standard. Now, EPUB 3 standard is not something that's really required for just a text-only book, but I'm trying to future-proof the product. So if this is the latest and greatest, I want to make sure that Bold Strokes books have the latest and greatest. And then 10 years from now, you know, EPUB 3 has been around for a while. Looks like it's going to be around for a while. So I feel confident that, you know, Bold Strokes books are going to be around, you know, as long as, you know, like the Twinkies are around. So, you know.
You can count on it.
For sure. Oh, thank you, Toni. That's amazing. And we're so grateful for you because I only understood about 50% of what you said. So
That's okay. I get it at home all the time. She just like tunes me out and then wonders, she'll be like, well, how was your day? And it's like, why are you even asking? Because as soon as I start talking, you gotta like, oh my God, here she goes geeking out again. So
we definitely need people like you. It's amazing. We have a question about professional development, which is kind of interesting. How is it that we got the jobs that we have? And what kind of qualification do you need to do this work? Brad?
Well, I won't speak for myself because my experience when I first started publishing was that I had published with some other publishers, and that was my initial experience. But through doing that, I had learned a lot about publishing, and that was how I decided I wanted to start a publishing company. In terms of the folks that work with us, I've been incredibly lucky over the years in that many of the people who have been with us the longest started as readers, like Toni, and came to me and said, I can do these things and I would really like to be able to do something. And I was smart enough and lucky enough to grab them up and keep them. Cindy was one of the first editors that I signed after the publishing house that she was working with initially, way back when, disappeared, and some of their authors came over with us. Sandie has a master's in publishing, and she was a very important addition to our team and has been now with us almost 10 years and came on board because the company had gotten so big that all of the things that I was doing up until then myself, I really couldn't do anymore. And I really needed to be able to diversify, and that's what Sandie has brought to us, an incredible understanding of the genre, as well as the ability to work with people, probably better than me. And, basically I have been able to, and Carsen essentially started as an author. And then when we realized that she had interest in doing other things, we tried to find as many things as we could that Carsen could do, because Carsen does them so well. She's totally reliable. I mean, basically, almost everyone has come from in-house. Many started as proofreaders and reviewers. And, I think that that's true for every company. The people that you bring close are the people who have been close, who have worked with you, have shown that it mattered to them what the product was and how well the company did. And I think that everyone who works here feels the same. And I, as a publisher, am incredibly fortunate that that is true.
I love that Rad just answered for all of us.
I'm sorry.
Turn that around, but now we don't need it.
That happens a lot.
I will say, to add on to Rad's comments, that certainly I did. A lot of us did start as proofreaders, which is a volunteer position here at BSB. So, we're talking about, get close and get your foot in the door and all that sort of thing. And that's one way to do that if you are interested in BSB or in any publisher, really. There's lots of small little tasks that you can do to become known, and that shows interest and enthusiasm and whatnot. And that's a great way to get your start. I actually trained Carsen in doing all our event stuff. And I remember when I first started training her, I was very much like, okay, like, you have to do it this way, okay? Because this is the way that I do it. And like, don't screw it up. Like, I'm worried about this. And over time, she's laughing at me. Over time, Carsen's role has expanded through the point where, it's as big as mine, because she has been able to do what we've asked of her so well. So I'd say that's another factor too, in terms of your role and your success in your role. I think, you know, we're a medium-sized publisher with a small team. And so if you're good at what you do and you're fast and you're reliable, then us and I'm sure any other employer will give you as much work as they can, because it's a lot easier to give work to the people who are already on your team and know your business than it is to hire someone brand new that you have to train up.
Just as an author perspective, I just want to say that the thing I always notice is the people who do work for Bold Strokes may be doing it because it's a second interest to them or whatever, but there's a hallmark of professionalism. Whether it's just something you're doing because you enjoy doing it on the side or whatever, everybody treats it like it's a job and it's important and it makes a difference. And I think that's important. Nobody treats it like it's a hobby, you know.
For sure. Carsen, do our authors pay the fees for awards and competitions? And what kind of awards and competitions do our authors compete in?
Bold Strokes provides some support in that regard. And we provide the books for any award submissions that our authors want to participate in, and making sure the books get to where they need to get if they've been nominated, whether it's, you know, the Thrill Fest, the Edgar Awards, the Lambda, GCLS, you name it, we'll make sure the books get there. As far as the award payments, our authors are allowed to select one that Bold Strokes will take care of. And so that, you know, that's a huge bonus to our authors to provide that support, both for the payment of a award submission and also to make sure the books get where they need to go for the nomination.
Yeah. And basically, we obviously, the Lammies and the Goldies are our main awards, but any award that you are interested in submitting your book to, we'll be happy to help facilitate that. We've had kind of like smaller regional, you know, Northeast Author Award, Midland, you know, UK Award. We've had a lot of, you know, success there too. So we are absolutely open to any and all awards. Rad, I saw one for you. BSB authors seem very prolific. Is there a requirement for how many books an author needs to write? And are authors allowed to write in multiple genres?
First answer, there is no minimum requirement. We do urge authors to remain active if it's possible, meaning there's a lot of content flooding in all the time through many different avenues. And it's important to maintain awareness in the reading public and to keep contact with your readers. What that means in general, we'd like to see a book a year, but not everyone can write that much or that fast. But if you're thinking about writing seriously long-term, then you ought to shoot for something in that range, but it's not a requirement. I mean, if we see a book 2 years later, 3 years later, you just want to be sure you don't lose your readership. And that's not hard to do these days. In terms of authors can write whatever they want. But what we hope when an author is part of a publishing company, that they're going to take advantage of some of our experience in what works in terms of building a career. And one of the first things that we would like to see is an author develop a brand, which means you need to develop a profile with your readership so that they know what they're getting and they know what you're going to give them. And if you write a romance and then you write a science fiction and then you write a general fiction, all of those have overlapping but not essentially the same readerships. So what we would like to see is authors develop with a book or two or three a strong brand and then branch out. But that's something that you would talk over when you submit a proposal, when you're getting ready to write your next book with Sandie, who will look at your sales numbers, will look at your audience, will take all the information that we gather about every book we publish to help us help you decide where to go next.
Absolutely true. Alrighty, we only have a couple of minutes. I can't believe this hour has flown by. So for our very last question, I would like to ask our whole panel, what is your favorite thing about your job? I mean, what is it that, what's the thing that makes your job the most worthwhile? Toni.
I think, like I said, being a developer, probably for me, it is taking what is, for me, the raw resources, but, for the other part of the process is the finished product. But for me, taking that raw resource and converting it to something that will allow people that want to have a different experience get what they want. So, yeah, that's it for me.
Love that. Cindy, how about you? Favorite part of your job?
There is no one thing that's the favorite. I mean, what I do, this is my dream job. I mean, I get to edit and engage my creative brain, and I get to do the production stuff, which is this very regimented, organized, you must stay on top of it, multitasking. So I get to feed all the areas of my brain. And I get to do it from my house, which I'm an introvert, so that's actually a good thing. Yeah, and I get to work in queer publishing, which is important to me. So,
Awesome. It's great to love everything.
I mean, I could be an editor somewhere else, and I would be mostly happy, but not, I wouldn't be editing the stuff I want to edit and necessarily. And so there are different components of my job that I could do somewhere else and be content, but not happy with the whole package.
Sure.
I'm very lucky.
Carsen, how about you? What's your favorite part of your job? Everyone, it's your boss, okay?
Yeah. No, I can only write so many books a year, but by doing all these other jobs, I get to help bring a bunch of other books out and, get them promoted and noticed, and getting to work in queer publishing is it's a dream. It's a dream I didn't even know I had, but I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. Rad, your favorite part of your job?
I love seeing a successful book because that means that there's going to be a happy author on the other end, and that happens a whole lot. So I'm happy a lot.
And for me, I've actually been asked this question before, and I do have a very kind of specific answer. For me, my favorite part is actually paying royalties, which I know is kind of weird, but I like that process of just kind of sharing this tangible component of an author's success and being like, hey, look what you did. You made all this money. So that's fun. I kind of feel like Santa.
We love you, Santa.
Awesome. I am so sorry for everyone who did not have their questions answered. We had so many questions. I have made a bunch of notes, lots of submissions and marketing questions. If you would like your question answered, please email me, Sandie@boldstrokesbooks.com. I'll be happy to answer them by email. And we are definitely going to add submissions and marketing panels to our next BSB PubFest. So thank you so much for that feedback. This has been great. Thanks, guys. Up next, we have a panel all about editing. Please join us for that very shortly. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here. Good job.
Bye.